Hi, my name is Claire Banamili. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at Bizagi. And one of the favourite aspects of my role is that I get to speak to our wonderful customers and find out how they've been using Bizagi and learn about their successes and achievements. One such customer is Russel Reynolds, who have recently deployed Bizagi as part of their shared services function and seen some great results. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Ryan Shaw, who's going to tell us a bit more about their story. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, thanks, Claire. My name is Ryan Shaw. As Claire has mentioned, I am the Director of Application Development at Russel Reynolds. Based in London, been here for 20 or so years, so I have a lot of experience on what's happened over these years from a technology perspective. And from a business perspective, Russel Reynolds' core business is executive search, but we offer an expanding list of other services such as assessment, board and culture advisory, diversity, inclusion, digital transformation, and succession planning. From a people makeup perspective, we're very distributed. We have 46 offices in 26 countries with over 2,000 employees. And my core responsibilities from a technology perspective are really core platforms to enable our search execution business to function, along with supporting technologies such as document management, document creation, enterprise search, and now our new platform, Bizagi, to help run our shared services and centers of excellence processes.
Great, thanks, Ryan. So let's start from the beginning. Tell us about your journey with Bizagi and where it all began.
Yeah, it all began two, maybe even 3 years ago. Russel Reynolds was a very traditional firm. We've served our clients in probably the same way for the past 50 years. And we wanted to find a way of modernizing the way that we do our work. And as part of that process, we developed some core objectives that we wanted to meet by doing so. We wanted to look at maximizing the value to our clients, see RA as a brand of excellence, improve the quality and the consistency of the work that we do for our clients, and improve the speed in which we can deliver that work to our clients. Outside of bringing benefits to our clients, we also wanted to put some focus on our employees too. We want to enable the best experience for our people internally, and want to be able to provide some flexibility to meet the changes in demand that our people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so we could enable those objectives to be met by a number of ways that we came up with, modifying the roles of the people and the responsibilities to people that are doing the work on the ground, free up the time of our people to be able to focus on other tasks and activities that bring real focus to the client value that we're delivering to our clients, implement better management of the workload that our people are doing in the available capacity of the individuals within the firm, and to be able to establish new firms to be able to focus on perhaps some of the more administrative, less client value-adding tasks and activities which we were responsible for doing as part of the work we were doing for our clients. So that was our objective. We'd had lots of anecdotal feedback to say what wasn't working well, what processes could do with improvement, what tasks were taking too long to complete, but we had no real data to back that up to start with. So very, very early on in the process, we ran, I guess, really a pilot of a time tracking system across 11 offices, which we asked those individuals in those offices to start to track their time against specific activities that we heard feedback on, to understand what was the real effort going into those activities, and where were the real pain points being experienced from those processes, so that we could try and validate some of that feedback, anecdotal feedback that we were hearing, as well as uncover other areas of pain point that we could potentially improve from a process perspective. So jumping ahead, that kind of time tracking pilot helped us validate some of the concerns that we had anecdotally been hearing, and that really formed a full program of work that planned and challenged us to change existing processes internally, and a large part of that was to expand what was an existing but small shared service team, but also the creation of 3 regional, what we called centers of excellence, which are ultimately research hubs for Russel Reynolds. We do a lot of research internally in terms of background of companies and individuals that we're going to be presenting to clients. And with the expansion of shared services and the introduction of CoEs, we needed some technology to be able to create, manage, and track work requests that our offices were going to be sending to those shared services CoE offsite locations. And that's really when our research for a BPM and workflow solution started. We ended up finding Bizagi, comparing those with other vendors, and we ended up signing with Bizagi at the end of April, I think, 2020, just a month after the COVID lockdown. So a great start point for us in lockdown to introduce a new process change and brand new technology to help support it. So the initial plan was really aggressive. We had two immediate processes that we wanted to focus on, which was all around data entry, and to stand up and pilot one of the three new CoE hubs. So to prepare ourselves from a technology perspective, we put the technology team through an intense training program with the help of Bizagi. We actually involved our business analysts as part of that process to gain some understanding and knowledge of the Bizagi platform itself and how things were designed in that platform. We engaged with professional services arm of Bizagi to help kind of give us a leg up when it came to starting to implement those first two workflows. And I'm happy to say and proud to say, particularly with the way my team executed and worked with Bizagi professional services, that those workflows were planned, delivered to plan and on budget during the summer and towards the end of summer of 2020. So having signed on the dotted line in April, gone through an intense training program, worked alongside Bizagi to deliver two workflows within 3 or 4 months, including the standing up of a shared service integration technology component to enable us to integrate with our other existing platforms within the business we already support within the business.
That's really quite an achievement, especially during the COVID lockdown period that a lot of us have been going through. But it seems like this new shared services function has really benefited the business. Would you say it's helped to sort of standardize processes across Russel Reynolds and provide some more clarity to users?
Really short answer to that is yes. Not to repeat myself, but just to reiterate, very early on we started to track the time of 11 offices to understand where to focus our time. That led ultimately to a firm-wide time tracking implementation, because we wanted to continue to understand the pain points of the business outside of the ones that we were already that had already confirmed and were addressing by the work that we'd already delivered and we're planning to deliver extra. But yes, you're right. The implementation of data entry and a couple of other processes that we did manage to get delivered in 2020 did bring some standardization to those core processes to the firm as a whole, not just to the data that we could supply to the senior executives within the firm, but it also provides some standardization to the legal team within Russel Reynolds, where we have legal obligations with our clients. Good example of that is for every candidate we put in front of a client, we have to validate the professional and academic qualifications that a candidate claimed to have. Prior to some of the process re-engineering that we did with Bizagi, every office used a different mechanism to go through that process. That's now centralized. We have one vendor, whereas previously it was a multitude of vendors depending on what country and what office you were in. With the Bizagi implementation and the process implementation with Bizagi, we now have one vendor, which in itself brings a consistency of results because they're all coming from the same vendor, a consistency of turnaround in terms of the time in the request, and we get results back from that vendor. We now have a standard set of SLAs, so we can set expectations of our users as to when they can expect to get results back from that particular vendor. And we get a consistency of data from that vendor, so we can provide feedback not just to our users but to senior management as well as to how that process is working and how efficiently we're getting that that validation of qualifications and professional qualifications completed. Another good example where the process has been fully improved is around internet checks. Again, another process that we have to do for all of our candidates before we put them in front of a client. We want to ensure that there's nothing untoward or sinister, for want of a better term, that we or the client could uncover in the future about a particular individual that we may be presented to them, or God forbid, ultimately place them into the client. We want to clearly avoid that at all costs. That was historically a largely manual effort for our research folks. That's now a fully automated, hands-off process until we get essentially what is a final report now presented to the research that they just have to read and say, yes, it's positive, no, it's negative, and record the final outcome of that review. Now, historically, before that Bizagi process was engineered, it would have been the researcher doing a Google. It would have been looking at any other publicly available information on other publicly informational sites to be able to gather that into their own report and to make a determination as to whether that was a positive or negative reflection on the candidate that we're going to be presenting. Today, it all happens during the natural workflow of the use of our other systems within Russel Reynolds. Bizagi just is taking care of and orchestrating all of that effort in the background without any other effort required by the researcher. From a management perspective within Russel Reynolds, Bizagi now gives us that opportunity to make a lot of data and provide a lot of insight into what was largely invisible, even just a couple of years ago, from the individual level, from the office level, from the regional level, and from the overall global perspective. How many requests are we making to service a particular process? Who's making them? Where are they coming from? How long are those requests taking to service? Are we trending up or down? So, do we need more capacity? Do we need less in a particular in a particular area at any point in time? And those insights are also enabling us to build forecasting models now, based upon the potential new business pipeline that we have. So if we win, 75% of that pipeline, we know we're going to have this much business. Do we need to scale up? Do we need to scale down? Based upon those forecasting models.
I mean, that sounds like it's really helping employees to do their job better, having that forecast, and as you mentioned earlier, the consistency that means that everything is being done in a standardized way, and even the internet checks that you mentioned, that's saving people a lot of time. So it seems like it's really benefiting Russel Reynolds employees. What other benefits would you say that the employees have seen from this process automation since deploying Bizagi?
I think it's perhaps obvious that one of the big benefits has been time saving. That's been a big accomplishment, certainly on some of the earlier processes that we implemented. That time saved, and again, we've been able to provide those metrics to prove that we are saving time off the back of those processes. Those individuals, because they're highly skilled individuals, they can spend their time doing other things, doing more value-add work for the client, rather than focusing on some of the administrative type work that they've historically had to do. That's big. That's been a big plus point for us and for the whole organization. Again, just as an example on that, the first process that we focused on was data entry, which I think I already mentioned. You can imagine we're a people organization. We process the data of hundreds of thousands of people on an annual basis. And it's critical that data that we store and process is as accurate as it can be, because it's going to be data that we present to the client, and we want it to be as accurate as it can be to provide, we don't want to lay any false representation to the client. So immediately after launch of that process, we were a little bit of a victim of our own success, and we had to scale up our shared service appropriately. But we were able to do that very quickly. But year to date for this year, again, this is a process that was only launched in end of the summer last year, but year to date so far in 2021, we've moved the equivalent of 71,000 hours of data entry work from our in-office teams onto our shared service team, which I think there or thereabouts equates to about 15 man days per month, there or thereabouts. Just entering data and ensuring the quality of the data is as good as it can be. And again, so those 50-man days are being used now for more client-focused work, and to ensure that what we're delivering to the client is of higher quality.
That's a phenomenal saving. That's really impressive. And as you say, that's enabling your employees to focus on some more kind of value add tasks and bring some more benefits to the clients rather than focusing on that admin.
Yeah, and again, I've mentioned the internet check process previously. That got turned on globally just earlier this year. I think we went globally. We pilot these things first. I think we turned it on globally February or March time this year. And year to date, we've processed 25,000 internet checks using the new service. Again, that's completely hands off to us now until we get the final report back, and it's just a case of read the report. Is it positive or negative? Again, that was otherwise a Google search, review other publicly available information. So that's been another massive time saver for our research department specifically, who can now spend their time, validating the quality of our candidates that we're going to be presenting to our clients to make sure that we can turn around the most appropriate candidate more quickly for that client.
That's some really impressive stats there. I mean, the fact that these background checks are now just automated is phenomenal. But I know from experience, sometimes employees can feel a bit threatened by that aspect of automation, that trope of like, oh, a robot's going to steal my job.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that you experienced at Russel Reynolds, and how did the employees respond to this automation that was helping them with their jobs?
Yeah, I think early on that there was a lot of nervousness around what does it really mean to me and my position within Russel Reynolds. But it was made very clear early on by senior management that this wasn't a program of work to take their job away. It was all built around us being able to grow as an organization and us to be able to deliver higher quality, better quality work to the clients that are paying us to find the most appropriate individual to fit within their organization. And again, the level that we work at, these are high level or top level positions that we need to make sure are of the highest quality to do the types of work that they will be asked to do in the clients that we're placing them within. So a lot of this may bleed into some of the other things that we're going to be talking about today. But I think the whole change management process that we had in place went a long way to facilitate bringing some comfort level to the people where these processes were going to be impacting on a day-to-day basis. And happy to talk about that as well in a little bit.
It's really amazing how introducing this new way of working can transform not just the employees' day-to-day lives, but the whole organization as a whole. It feels like it's just helping you to be able to conduct a better business and better serve your clients. As you say, you're putting the right people in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've given some really great insights here, and there'll be viewers who are embarking on similar journeys with Bizagi. So what advice would you give them to anyone who is at the beginning of this journey?
I've probably got lots of things that I could say, and some of it may be obvious just from a general technology implementation perspective, but I have a go at it, hoping in a hope to give you something that's going to be really, really useful. So from a technology perspective, I and my team had a really clear vision of how we wanted to use Bizagi and how we wanted to implement it, including how we want to integrate it with our internal systems. And a large part of that vision was driven by the almost concern of our users having to deal with too much change. We had lots and lots of plans over and above the first couple of processes that we want to touch upon. So familiarity was a big thing for us. Nobody likes change. We want to limit how much those users are going to be impacted. So we put a lot of thought into how we can modify the processes with limiting the impact to the people that are going to be executing those modified processes and reimagined processes. And we did that in many cases, through integration rather than direct exposure to the Bizagi platform itself. And that really brought the familiarity of the existing applications that our users already had. They were still going to click the same menu option or button within the application. It just happened to send data to a workflow system now called Bizagi in the background to go and do what that user needed that process to do for them on their behalf. So from that perspective, we sent as much data as we could from an existing system that they would use on a day-to-day basis to the workflow, so that they didn't have to rekey or worry about what the Bizagi user experience might be in any particular area of that process. And we did that through what we called conscious or unconscious behaviors of a user. So there are certain elements within the process where a user is consciously going to want to do something. So a degree verification, although we do it for all candidates, it will be initiated during the different life cycle of a particular candidate. So the end user needs to perform that initiation of a degree verification consciously. They need to perform an action to make it happen, compared to some of the unconscious decisions that we need to do or invoke from a process perspective, like the internet check. That the normal use and actions that are already in their process flow of another application just makes that happen. The user themselves don't need to think about starting the internet check workflow. It just happens in the background on their behalf. Don't over-engineer it. Don't expect it to be perfect at the very beginning. Keep it simple, but be prepared to iterate on the feedback that you hear, because you will get lots of feedback. That was certainly our experience. And if you're going to be willing to listen to that feedback, make sure that you make those individuals giving that feedback, make sure they're aware that you're actually listening to it and you're actually reacting to it. If people feel they're influencing the final outcome and have some control over what's being delivered, that's just going to help with the adoption of the technology and the processes that are making use of that technology. This might sound obvious. Pilot anything before you deploy it to the rest of the firm. We use feature switches within our environment so that we can turn features off at the user level, at the office level, to give us the flexibility and scalability of that pilot, so we can grow and shrink the pilot as and when we need to. From a business perspective, very important to keep users updated and engaged. Provide them with some data. How much of the processes are being used? How many requests have been made? What difference has it made on their time? Summarize the feedback that you're hearing and let them know the feedback that you've already reacted to and made changes to the software based on hearing that feedback, and let them know what else you might be learning along the way as you start to understand how the technology is being used. We made use of local champions in all of our offices. I think people locally in local offices are more willing to engage with people they're more familiar with. If they can see somebody that they work with on a day-to-day basis getting really excited about a change and understanding how it's helping their day-to-day, they're going to be more willing to promote the change themselves and to adopt that change themselves as well. And we also used 5 or 10 minutes in pre-existing meetings or forums just to deliver small tidbits of information about what's coming next, or again, feedback we may have already reacted to. And the last point I'll make is, because again, people are busy, people don't like change, people won't necessarily turn up to a training session when you need them to. So we've also used small 60-second, 2-minute video snippets just to showcase discrete elements of the change that we've put in place. So they might not turn up to training, but at some point they're going to need to do whatever it is the technology is supporting them to do. And that video is there just to support them, almost a just-in-time learning mechanism, so that if they're not unsure what to do, there's a 60-second or 2-minute video to assist them along the way.
I love the idea of those 60-second snippets. That's great. And it seems like from your story, the real takeaway is that when you're deploying a new solution, it's not just about the technology, it's about people and that sort of change management aspect. So I think that's something that everyone can relate to. And thank you for sharing your views. I found it really interesting, and I'm sure our listeners have as well. So thank you very much for joining us, Ryan.
Pleasure. Very welcome.
Thank you.